Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. Hi, I'm David Manti with Cannabis Equipment News, and with me today is Jesse Elkins, founder of Grow Industries. Thank you very much for joining me today, Jesse.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having us on.
So I'd like to start out. Could you tell me how you got into the cannabis industry?
Just the right place at the right time. I'm from Washington State, one of the first states to go legal for medical cannabis. Right around the time I was graduating high school is actually when we went medical. I went to refrigeration school to become a refrigeration and air conditioning technician, and had some friends in high school that started growing indoor cannabis. We quickly realized that one of the most important aspects about growing indoors is climate control. You have all the heat from all these lights going in there, and you got to get rid of the heat. So I went over and did a buddy's job and just put some air conditioning in, something real quick. I didn't think much of it. It was cool and exciting, but at that time, it was just kind of a one-time thing. A couple of years went by, and didn't think much of it. But then another referral came in from him. I think it was from him, and a little bit bigger. So I went and did his, and that it kind of like snowballed from there. In 2007, I actually had enough of these indoor gardens to quit my job and start doing this full time for myself. So I started a company called ClimaGrow in 2007, and all we did was specialize in doing indoor cannabis gardens. I'd say by 2013, that started picking up where it wasn't just me anymore. I was starting to hire employees. I think we had right around 20 employees by 2015. The cannabis market went recreational in 2014. When that happened, we were the only people that did what we did. There was no one else that specialized in it, so we had kind of a free open market. We got every single job. It turned from these little home basement grows or little home grows to real, it turned into a real industry, a real it went from home grows to an industrial grows, I call them. So so fast forward a little bit more. So we're doing all these jobs. We're seeing all these different problems everyone's having. This is an industry that didn't really exist before, keep in mind. So in 2016 is when we actually officially started Grow Industries. The difference is instead of just doing climate control, we actually helped design and build the whole factory, the whole cultivation factory, and that's what's led us to now.
Okay. So when you made that transition from ClimaGrow to Grow Industries, what changed that you realized, not only did you have more expertise in HVAC, but you sort of had more expertise from the entire facility point of view?
Yeah, so all these years of working in grow facilities doing climate control, I'm in the gardens. I'm talking to the growers on a daily basis. I'm seeing every single little issue they're having, whether I'm a part of it or not. I'm still overhearing the conversation, or I'm seeing the problems. I hands down, I know more growers than any single grower knows other growers, right? I'm in every single operation. I know everybody. I'm talking to everybody. A lot of them are telling me what their problems are, or maybe asking me advice on this or that, even though it's not my job, whatever the case is. So I just saw how much of a need there was to design a facility from the ground up the correct way. And right off the bat, right when we started Grow Industries, we got some of the biggest names in we're still in Washington State there for a couple of years. We hadn't gone nationwide yet, so we got some of the biggest names to hire us and design or build their facility. And it just I would say this, after a couple of decades of seeing what not to do, it really only leaves you the one correct way to design a facility.
So, what were some of these problems people were having, and what were these things that you shouldn't be doing? And sort of what is your approach when it comes to designing a facility?
Sure, no, that's great. The one of the biggest ones is back to environments, which is what I specialized in. Even if a lot of guys would just guess, they would call up an HVAC guy and just kind of put in, guess what to put in. Um, even if they hired an engineer, like a mechanical engineer to tell them how much to put in, they're gonna ask how many lights and how many watts the lights are. That engineer is going to he's going to figure out a formula, how many BTUs it takes to cool down a watt of energy. You can Google it. It's 3.41 BTUs per watt. Simple. Well, that works great, but not in a horticulture environment, meaning you have live plants, the plants are transpiring, you have all this moisture. So we came up with these formulas that were, I'm going to say they're at least doubled what an engineer would tell you. So that's one of the biggest battles. In 2017, roughly 50% of our business was retrofitting brand new facilities that were built incorrectly, or I should say designed incorrectly and then built incorrectly. So that's the biggest challenges I see is the environments. Another one is I'm seeing these facilities that are maybe 20 to 50,000 square feet. Well, let's look at a 20,000 square footer. Back in just 2015, I would expect to see at least 30 employees running around, kind of everyone doing different stuff, not no one really specializing in one thing, just kind of chaotic, right?
Hmm.
And again, that's because it's so brand new. That facility might have just opened up. Nowadays we automate facilities so well that size facility, you don't need 30 employees. You might need five, or
Yeah.
maybe six at the most. And that's because everybody has their exact job to do every day. It's very fine tuned. It's kind of just like the military, everyone has their position. And it's so automated that the reason there's not 30 employees is it takes all of that, and it's automated, so it takes all that employees away. And it also lowers the liability, not having so many employees. So I'd say those couple of things, or excuse me. So we designed the facility kind of like what Henry Ford did for the automobile industry.
Hmm.
He didn't invent the car, but he definitely invented a manufacturing shop that had a conveyor belt that you know put a better product out faster, and lowered the liability of the facility, and automated the facility. And that's what we do for this industry.
Okay. So tell me, actually, I thought you were going in a different direction when you said retrofitting new facilities, because I've heard a lot about, people finding older buildings or just trying to find any space really and make an indoor grow operation. Do you have experience with retrofitting those facilities as well? And then tell me what it's like going into a brand new building and just saying, yeah, this is all wrong. Spent a lot of money here. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, I've done that a lot.
Yeah.
um Man, I've done plenty of retrofits over the years.
Hmm.
Some of them brand spanking new buildings that they would put the plants in, and within 1 or 2 weeks, they realized that they have control over nothing. So what they would do is usually scale back, maybe hold on to like one out of 12 rooms, just so they can say they're growing, while we're ripping and tearing and retrofitting the other 11 rooms. So yes, we've done plenty of them. We like I mentioned in 2017. That's right around the time, right before I think California went recreational. That's when we had a lot of those facilities that were being built in anticipation of going rec. When they got done, they turned the lights on. They flipped the flower, and flipping the flower just means they flip into the last cycle of the grow. And that's where you realize that you cannot maintain temperature, humidity. You might not have any CO2, that sort of thing. So we helped dozens of facilities of brand new facilities retrofit them and get them back up to par. What was your question about the about? Sorry, I was kind of a two-part question. What was your next one after that?
Oh, not just the new facilities. I was curious about when people try moving into older facilities that have served a previous purpose, and they're trying to make it an indoor grow.
Oh, right. Yes, that's where we started off. So let's go back to like 2014 in Washington State. Um, I did not do any ground up facilities. So every facility I did back then was just some old building that they made into a grow facility. We made them work. It's
Hmm.
not the correct way. The correct way is definitely to build ground up so you can have your underground plumbing, you can have your French drains, you can have you can have the right footings for whatever you need. So for one good example is one of my clients picked a building that was built in like the 1930s or 40s. Um, we retrofitted it was working okay, but in the last weeks of flower he had huge humidity spikes, and we knew that we did our calculations right. We knew that we put in enough dehumidification to take out the moisture that he was based on the amount of water he was putting in a 24-hour period. Well, one day he walked over and he moved a garbage can over, and he's like, "Hey, this is always wet under here. Does this have anything to do with it?" And I kind of thought for a sec, yeah, it might. So we drilled a hole, found out that the slab was only 2 inches thick. It should be it should be 6 inches thick or more, four at the minimum. So what was happening is we were creating such a dry space inside the space that it was literally pulling the moisture up from the groundwater. Again, this is in Washington State.
Hmm.
There's always groundwater, so it was pulling it up through the concrete, which was affecting his growth tremendously.
Yeah.
So I have plenty of examples like that, but that's the one that I have in mind, right, about moisture control. So yeah, it's better to do a ground up building than just make some old building work. But even till today, a lot of our business is still um, working with working with older buildings that are just big empty warehouses. That's very common even today.
So when people are looking to get into an old warehouse, what are some of the red flags they should watch out for?
Insulation values. Let's start there. So, again, look at the slab. Make sure it has enough concrete between the dirt underneath and the indoor environment. On the shell, make sure it's at least an R21, value. If it's an old metal. An old metal building, they might have only put in like an R8 ceiling, and after
Hmm.
30 years it's now an R2, basically nothing. That's going to make our job very tough because we do these heat load calculations based on the lights, both latent loads, which is the lights, the plants themselves, pumps, whatever else is in there, and the sensible loads. What we do not anticipate for is incoming heat from the sun. So if you only have I mean, we'll figure it out before we get to that point, of course. But if you only have like an R2 or less insulation value, we're going to have to put in even more, maybe double the amount of HVAC. Why spend so much money on environmental controls when you could just put up more insulation? The other big factor there is let's say you've got a building that's 30, 40, 50 years old. Who knows what kind of contaminants are in that building? Who knows what it's been used for? Maybe it was a boat manufacturer and it has a bunch of asbestos, or something in it. Who knows?
Hmm.
So it could be chemical contaminants, but also who knows what kind of insects are in the building. What about mold? that sort of thing. So if you get a building like that, the one suggestion I have is just rip everything down to the studs. So rip out all that old insulation from the the walls to the ceiling, clear or coat the concrete floor, seal that up, make sure it's thick enough first, then seal it up. Um, and basically just sanitize the whole thing 100% times and times and times over until it's a completely clean facility to start with. Then we have something to work with.
You started as a one-man operation in Washington. Where are you located now, and how big is the company?
Well, I'm actually in Arizona. So for the last 5 years, I've been traveling the country. So I've built
Mhm,
facilities all the way from Washington State all the way out to Boston and down.
mhm.
I spent a year and a half in California. So I've been traveling a lot. But Arizona is one state that was just going recreational this year. I liked the weather in Arizona, so I kind of get to choose wherever I want to live in the country. When I'm on a job, I travel all the time, but my home base can be anywhere. So I currently live in Arizona, but the company's actually out of New York. Now
Okay.
this is G Corp that bought Grow Industries.
Mhm,
They're out of New York. It's really a small family owned company, 5 employees. However, I brought my team with me. When I say my team, is I've got architects, engineers, growing consultants. I mean, pretty much every aspect of our company. I've got a huge network of a team now that I work with on a daily basis. So now we're all together. But the actual owners of the company are in New York. It's the Gilder family, and like I said, it's a smaller family owned company.
Yeah, I wanted to congratulate you on the acquisition. That's big news.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, after 14 years of working by myself, or owning the company solely myself, this is going to be quite the change. I have a lot of plans based off this. So
Yeah, I mean, to that point, how is the acquisition going to help you grow the business?
if as any business owner knows, let's say you go out for 8 or 10 hours and do your job, you still come home and you still got just as much time running a company, right?
Hmm.
So taking running the company off my plate allows me to travel more, allows me to be on the phone more, just allows me to be talking to my clients more,
Hmm.
giving them the attention they really deserve. After hours, instead of running a company, I've invented a couple of things for this industry. Being such a new industry, there's really nothing that's made for it. So not just myself, but that's every grower out there has invented something for this industry. Just it's an innovative industry, right? So I've got a lot of ideas. I've got a lot of stuff that I want and need to get into this marketplace. So I'm hoping to use a little bit of that free time in the weekends and stuff, to come up with some new innovative technology for this industry. So I'm excited about that.
Um, have you had anything in particular that you've invented go to market, or are you? And have you had anything patented?
I have a provisional patent on a CO2 injection device. The
Mhm.
government doesn't really understand why we're pumping CO2, or carbon dioxide into a building. So it's been quite of a challenge to get that to go from a provisional patent to a actual patent. So right now it's just patent pending. It's a provisional patent, but it did go to market. It didn't stop that. So a lot of HVAC manufacturers use it, and all it is just a device that has a 3/8 barb hooked up to it. You hook up your liquid CO2 line to it, goes in the return air side of the HVAC equipment, and the CO2 drops down. Typically, the cold air drops from the ceiling and goes down over the canopy. The CO2 drops with it and kind of evenly goes over the canopy. So
Very
that
cool.
that's the one so far.
Okay. Well, I mean, still, that's I mean, it'll be it'd be cool to have the opportunity to dedicate more time and resources to those ideas that you have.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Um, so you're out, like you said, you're out in the industry a lot. What are some of the biggest challenges that these cultivation facilities are running into now? Is a lot of it regulatory? Is there still a lot of challenges from an operational standpoint, or is it kind of all still up in the air?
It's everything you just said. It really is. But I'd say, one of their biggest challenges. Well, no, I'd say two evenly. Is one is financial.
Hmm.
um this is still a cash business. You still can't borrow money from a bank for this industry. Hopefully that's going to say change this year very soon, but we'll see. So that's one of the biggest challenges. But with that is keeping the lights on. When you start a grow facility, you're not going to create revenue, you're not going to create profit right away. You might have to run 3 or 4 harvests until you have enough funds to actually start paying for everything. So the biggest advice I would give any new startup is make sure you have enough funds to run the company, probably safe to say 8 months into the future. And don't expect anything. This is just like farming. Um, Anyone that knows any farmer outside, like I believe it's like once every 7 years, they lose their whole crop. Be prepared for anything. I think that'd be the biggest challenge I see. So.
Yeah, be prepared for the unexpected.
Yeah, and one other challenge is growing too fast. A lot of companies, and this doesn't just go with cannabis. I mean, heck, I went through this with ClimaGrow. You get up and going. You're excited. You have a place for all that product, so you expand and you hire way too quickly. And I see a lot of growing pains in pretty much every company because
Mhm.
they're just trying to hit the marketplace too fast. Get in foreseeable see they like they want to get their brand out there quickly. So but I definitely see them growing way too fast.
Mhm. What are your expectations for maybe some of the next states to go legal, and then what are your expectations for federal legalization?
You know, I mean, my expectations is I wanted to go federally legal right now.
Yeah.
Um, I think this year, I think in October, the fair the the Fair Cannabis Banking Act, or I might have said that wrong, but I think they're going to pass. And what that will allow is finally, maybe you'll be allowed to finally get an SBA loans, for a cannabis grow,
Mhm.
like any other business owner gets. But now they can borrow money from the bank. Hopefully, they can maybe some of these bigger companies can go publicly traded. That would be huge for this industry. Now, shortly after that, I really feel in the next couple of years that we'll go federally legal. Um, then hopefully it'll take the stigma away from the industry.
Yeah.
When I'm walking down the street and someone asks what I do, and I say, "Oh, I'm in the cannabis industry," I never know what type of feedback I'm going to get. I don't know if they're looking at me like, even without explaining what I do, for the cannabis industry. You never know if you're going to get a look like, "Oh, you're a criminal," or something like.
Right. Right.
I'm hoping it just takes that stigma away from the industry and just becomes like any other industry.
Yeah. No, I wanted to get back into the specific equipment. So, could you tell me how, when a company invests in the best cultivation and manufacturing facilities and equipment, how does it provide a competitive edge for them?
Sure. So, excuse me. So for the first at least the first 10 years, I was heavily into this industry. We were making off the shelf equipment work. So I'd go to like my local supplier. I'm sure you've heard of these brands, but like Train and Carrier and Payne, these are all standard kind of household name HVAC equipment stuff. We were making them work, but with that said, it looked more like a heartbeat on a screen, kind of the up and down. So if you wanted at 70 degrees and 50% RH, you might see somewhere 72, 73, 74 degrees and then kind of back down.
Mhm.
So we were making equipment work for at the time. That's the best we had. Um, about, let's see, I think in 2017 we found a manufacturer out of Oklahoma called Aon. They were the first ones that actually came to us, and they realized the problem, obviously. So they said, look, we won't build equipment that you can buy off the shelf. In fact, you tell us the parameters of what you want in the facility. So what's the temperature, what's the desired temperature, what's the desired relative humidity, and what's the load. How many lights do you have in it, how much water are you putting in a 24-hour period of time. And they build us a custom piece of equipment, and a company called AGS out of California helps us with those calculations. So they build a piece of equipment where instead of like that heartbeat, it's just a flat line, 24/7 for 9 weeks straight. So it doesn't variance at all. It just so the benefits is it keeps your environment 100% stable, from week 1 through week 9,
Mhm.
which is ultimately going to give you a much, much higher quality product and a much higher yield as well.
Do you find that you run into trouble when you're telling people to buy specific equipment because it winds up being a cost versus performance sort of calculation?
Yeah, cost yeah. We will always make the recommendation, and our recommendation is always going to be the most expensive recommendation out there.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I kind of always have to be the bearer of bad news. Now, if we're just designing a facility, it's up to our client to take our finished design and use it or not. But unfortunately, sometimes they see the price tag on everything and they go, instead of using this brand, we're going to go with my buddy's friend has a HVAC company. We're going to go with whatever brand he has. It's half the price. It'll okay. I mean, we strongly urge not to, but they'll end up doing it, and they'll call us up later and say, "Hey, Jesse, man, we got into week 2 and everything looked okay, but we hit week 4, our humidity's at 75%. We're on the verge of getting some powdery mildew, or the plants aren't looking too well. What can we do?" Then now they have to go back and spend way more money to start adding in and just throwing equipment at the problem. If that if that sounds like right.
So do you have a specific like list of preferred suppliers that you work with for each piece of equipment, and that's sort of depending on the facility who you spec into the plans?
Yeah, of course. Just like myself being a contractor for so long, I always like having 2 or 3 different quotes from different companies. So
Mhm.
I try to keep that in mind, even though sometimes we don't have that many. I do have a preferred list that I send out to my clients, and I say, it's entirely up to you, but this is who we use. And actually, over the course of years, we've built a lot of relationships with some of these companies and even manufacturers. So it's kind of like buying power. The more you buy, the better price you get, right? So if I've got a half a dozen clients that are ready to order some equipment at the same time, we basically group them all up into like one order, and we might get 10 or sometimes 15% off from the manufacturer. We try not to go through retail stores ever. We try not to go through wholesale stores. We try to go, and we have so much buying power. We're able to do this, but a lot of times we go straight to the manufacturer now. So I'm kind of doing the job of uh, of piecing together the model numbers and that sort of thing that a wholesaler or retailer would do. But we for the most part, we go, at least on all the big ticket items, we have direct manufacturing pricing now. and we send enough business to them to keep that flow going and keep the prices down. But again, that's directing a client, directly to a vendor. We still always tell them, hey, if you can find apples to apples, if you can find this product somewhere else, definitely go get yourself a quote, so then we can compare them. So I always stick to that old contractor in my head from back in the day that would get multiple quotes on every item. And especially now, building ground up buildings like the steel package, I'll get 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 different quotes on the steel package on some of those heavier items.
Hmm. Um, you've talked a little bit about this earlier, but what have been some of the major changes when it comes to cannabis facilities that you've seen over the last 20 years?
Yeah, yeah. So I straight up home basement grows or
Hmm.
home back bedroom grows. They kind of looked like the inside of a NASA spaceship, right?
Yeah.
Uh, Foil on the walls and pipes and wires hanging everywhere. I mean, I've I've got some pictures from back in the day of some of that stuff. We really didn't start taking pictures of these facilities probably until 2013. Growers were they just did not. They first off, they didn't want you in there. They didn't want you knowing what was in there. They're
Hmm.
sure as heck not going to let you pull your phone out and take a picture, but it was pretty remarkable. So we've taken the industry from that to now in an industrial grow facility, so an actual facility somewhere that grows cannabis, and the walls now look like, I would say they look like the inside of a laboratory. Everything's white, hospital grade paint, so it's antimicrobial, antibacterial, bright white finish. We go above and beyond, and like even the mounts for the lights, we have powder coated white with that antimicrobial paint as well. So when you look at a room for 20 years ago, it would look like the inside of a NASA spaceship. Now, when you look at a room inside, all you see is nice, clean everything, lights, tables, plants. That's it. There's nothing else in the room. Any electrical, I always put outside of the room. All you'll see is the plug inside. I mean, so we've really fine tuned these to just really look professional. If someone walked in that didn't know anything about it, they would think, well, this is a real industrial, grow facility. So that's the biggest change.
What is the smallest industrial facility that you've worked on? And then on the other side, what is the biggest operation you've worked on?
Yeah, sure. So the smallest would be back in the day was when I started, 3 artificial lights.
Hmm.
One room, 3 artificial lights, and they were only 600 watts. Till now, we're designing some facilities. I don't want to talk about the newest one quite yet, but up until now, we've designed facilities that will cater 3,000 lights.
Oh, can it? Can a facility be too big to have a successful grow?
I have not run into it yet, but I mean, in theory, yes, you're absolutely right. I really, truly believe a facility could be too big. Now, what would happen in that scenario is I would simply say divide. Let's say you're looking at 1.5 million square foot building that someone wants to build. I might suggest to kind of cut that up into bite size chunks, right? So instead of having one massive facility, maybe break it up into 4 or even 10 different smaller facilities that are all self-contained but under the same umbrella, as ownership type thing. And
Okay.
that's largely due to just making sure every single plant has to be checked out by humans all the time. So that kind of bites it down where you can have like multiple different operation. Again, it's one owner maybe, but you have a general for every single different section, and down the line.
Mhm.
And then that what that does is compartmentalize the building up too. So again, if you have a problem in building A, you kind of close it off and isolated it, and you keep on going with B, C, D, E, F, G down the line, you know.
Hmm. In the G Corp press release, you would you say that there is a shortage of topic experts across the value chain. How do we fix that problem in the industry?
You know, it's really just going to be time.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I mentioned that all these years, I haven't had much competitors, and maybe it's because, maybe it's because I was such a small company. I had no rules against myself, so I jumped into cannabis. But when we move into a new state, we always try to find licensed contractors in that state that want to work kind of for our team.
Mhm.
Man, when I start picking up the phone on those days, I'll call at least a dozen guys, and maybe one will say maybe. Like
Yeah.
cannabis, especially in a state that just goes rec, cannabis still has that unbelievable, poor taste to it, the
Mhm.
stigma around it. So it's really hard to find guys that want to jump in. You really have to see an opportunity in the future to jump into the cannabis game. So I didn't have much competition because of that reason. Even today, we still don't have a lot. There's a couple companies that are popping up that kind of specialize in engineering or architectural or design of grow facilities. But um, yeah, sorry. Back to your original question. Uh, it'll come. I'll
Okay.
say it that much. I'd say in 10 years from now, there'll be plenty of companies like myself that specializes in designing or building grow facilities.
Okay. I also read that you have built some of the most envied cultivation and manufacturing facilities in the world. So, A, that's awesome. B, what's your favorite? What's your
So
best work?
let me tell you a little bit about the story of G Corp. So
Hmm.
G Corp owns a company called Bountiful Farms. They Bountiful Farms hired me in February of 2000 or excuse me, uh, February 2017 to design this new facility they wanted. Well, I realized right off the bat, like every time I suggested, up until then, everybody always told me, no, we don't have the budget to do what you want, Jesse. Here's your budget. Like, let's make this work. G Corp, man, they were like, or Bountiful Farms was like, hey, great, sounds good. Every suggestion I made to them, they went for it. So I realized like I had an open checkbook. I was able to finally design and build a facility that was my dream come true. It had everything in it that I could possibly want, right? Um, so with that said, even though it's been a couple of years since it was built, it's still my favorite facility. It still has all the bells and whistles. It's definitely a state of the art facility, and that's how we ended up joining forces. Now is we just got along so good, and I saw that they were in it for the right reason. They wanted the highest facility in America.
Yeah. I mean, that had to be exciting to build.
It was every day was exciting. We're really big like on Instagram,
Hmm.
just because it's picture based. And man, I would post pictures of all kinds of stuff through a year and a half worth of construction, and every single time it just got flooded with likes and comments, and just just a very exciting thing going on at the time.
Well, that's one thing that I like the most about this industry is that it seems like a very collaborative industry. And while you say that you struggle to find contractors that want to get into it, everybody that's in the industry wants to be here and seemingly wants the industry to succeed.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I don't know anyone that wants it to fail.
Well, yeah, no, or not fail, but like, it seems like everyone's in it with, you know, uh, for genuine reasons, not just, I guess, because it's a great business proposition.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, of course. And that's ultimately why I got into it.
Hmm.
I mean, yes, I was at the right place at the right time. I was good at what I did. But if it was like meth labs or something, I would it would have got out right away. But
Yeah.
The truth is I do highly believe in the product.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I lost my dad to alcoholism in 2013. After that happened, man, I dedicated myself to cannabis because I know that it would have saved his life
Mhm.
if it was more readily available to him. I actually built one of the things that got us in the industry is I built a product called Tow and Grow. It was a big 24 foot trailer that had fully self-contained. You could tow it home and start growing tomorrow instead of spending a couple months building a grow in your house.
Right.
I needed to get away from the world a little bit after my dad passed, so it was a perfect timing. I just kind of locked myself in the shop. I built this trailer. I named it after him, or the MJE, the financial part of the company. But I know for a fact that cannabis would have saved his life over alcoholism, and that's really been my biggest drive behind this. Is I highly believe in the product.
Well, I think you're doing exemplary work, and it was a real honor to talk to you today.
Yes, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Jesse. But all right, for Jesse Elkins, I'm David Manti, and this has been the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.